scenes on the waterfront of major cities and ports have come a long way from the dingy, toxic, industrial look of yesteryear. Here to share some insight on what's changing is Lilo Stainton, campaign director of the New York and New Jersey Harbor Coalition. Thanks for taking the time this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Big changes on the waterfronts. We've seen in many cities, Boston, down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and here in New York.
We're starting to come around in this city as well, New York and New Jersey. Yeah, I mean, these are changes that are primarily driven by the public. What we've seen in this country is obviously we have a very historical connection to our waterfront. That was a nexus for shipping and for all kinds of industry through the 1800s and into the 1900s. And then we sort of turned our backs on our waterfront, and now we're turning around and we're embracing it again. In New York City, they talk about the sixth borough being the waterfront, and it's a way to connect different parts of the city and the region by ferries. It's a way to embrace sort of a new open space. There are parks on the waterfront, so it's a real change, and it's largely driven by people.
Well, that's what my next question was. What's behind the change?
Yeah, I mean, the model, I'm part of a group called the New York, New Jersey Harbor Coalition, and this is a campaign to invest in our waterfront. And the reason for that and the model that we're basing this on is ones that have been very successful in other parts of the world, particularly in the Great Lakes and San Francisco and some of the places that you mentioned. And what they have in common is this citizen-driven effort. You have a large group of nonprofits that have come together. You have environmental organizations. You have shippers and ports and labor and other parts of this community, and they've all come together to sort of realize here's this incredible asset that we have that is not being recognized and not invested in as much as it could be.
That's an interesting mix you don't see in other efforts that might be political or public. Usually it's one or the other, but you have a wealth of different people involved.
It is, and the Harbor Coalition in particular is unique that way. We have, from New York and New Jersey, very interesting, diverse mix of groups, environmental justice groups, large environmental organizations that are national, parks groups. We have groups that are involved in planning and work with the Port Authority. So there's quite a diversity there of interests that, and there, this is about human interest. It's about families having places where they can go that are clean and that are healthy, and places they can see their waterfront. It's about economics. I mean, there's an enormous return on investment when you talk about investing in your waterfront, your harbor.
Well, you have an interesting a battle going on, if you will, between the recreation use, the public use, and financial interests.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking about major ports here.
Yeah, and in New York and New Jersey in particular, I mean, we have a port that's, generates billions of dollars every year. It employs hundreds of thousands of people, and we have to balance that with citizens' needs and public needs, and a way to protect and conserve the water, the water quality, the public space.
But how do you get the corporations to come on board? Because that's like turning a ship.
Exactly, it is like turning a ship, and it is it's a difficult path, but I think it's important because there is this bottom line of investing in the infrastructure and the economic return. In the Great Lakes, for example, there have been studies done that show the federal dollars that were invested there achieved a 6-to-1 return. So that's a bottom line that I would suspect corporations could understand. That's a language that they can speak.
Now, how do you get more public involvement? How do you get the individuals, the citizens to come out?
Exactly. The Harbor Coalition, I mean, we have a social media campaign, harborcoalition.org. We're going to start a photo campaign about the harbor. We are participating in public events. They're all listed on our waterfront. And we're doing a petition to convince Congress that this is important. One of the key steps, of course, in the United States is to convince the elected leaders. And we can have these citizen-driven movements, but you need Congress to buy in. And we have, as you can imagine, a remarkable strength of congressional elected officials in this region. But they haven't always worked together. New York and New Jersey, this is a classic story in our region. So part of this is about getting them on the same page and having them view this asset as something that is joined, something that connects them.
And give us a sense of what New York, New Jersey is going to look like as we obviously are on the world stage.
Right.
What are we going to see?
Well, we like to think, we think New York and New Jersey is a world-class waterfront. We have millions of visitors every year. This is a place that people recognize. They come, they see the Statue of Liberty. What if it had the ferry system of Sydney? What if it had sort of the public space that communities in the Mediterranean, Istanbul, or, I was lucky enough to spend some time in Croatia. There are wonderful parks and public spaces that really embrace that waterfront while having a working waterfront, having a fishery, having shipping and other commercial interests that are still active in the harbor. You can have that balance, and it really is about, you have to plan carefully, and so now is the time. I mean, I like to point out that at one point Central Park was in no man's land, and there was a lot of forethought that took to get that preserved, and we like to look ahead like that. So we're looking 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road.
Look forward to seeing what happens.
Thank you.
Lilo Stainton, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.